Queer News and Journalism is a Gay 45 original podcast published every week on Thursdays, where we come together to comment on the topics in the weekly queer news published by our newsletter, The Nine. Subscribe on gay45.com to get the latest news every week. This will be our final newsletter of the year. In 2026, we return with a refreshed and more compelling format. We wish you a fabulous new year.
And welcome back to the Deep Dive. It has been an absolutely monumental, chaotic year in the global landscape. And if you, like us, feel like the news is just moving at a speed that makes your head spin, well, you are in exactly the right place. Our mission, as always, is to quickly but really thoroughly unpack the latest global data, the political developments, and all the cultural moments that we've extracted straight from the newest Gay 45 material. And we've pulled together a stack of information that is, it's dense, it's global, and it is highly contrasted.
Contrasted is the perfect word for it. I mean, if you look at the Gay 45 reports this year, this material reveals a world that's defined by a really stark contradiction.
Okay, how so? Well, on one hand, we're seeing this explosive rising visibility, culturally, digitally, and, in terms of just raw, quantifiable demand for queer content. But at the very same time, we're tracking a clear, hardening pattern of political repression and just escalating hostility. And it's being driven by major state actors.
It's like the world is hitting the gas and the brake at the same time.
Exactly. And that tension isn't just theoretical. That push and pull is defining the lived experience for millions of people right now.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when we look at the political landscape covered in the Gay 45 material, it really does appear to be the most aggressive front right now. It feels less like local pushback and more like a globally coordinated political siege.
It absolutely feels coordinated. The political shifts we're tracking are severe, and they're moving so rapidly from, aggressive rhetoric to actual legislative and judicial action across multiple continents.
Let's start with Turkey, then, where the rhetoric isn't just aggressive, it is coming directly from the top. We saw First Lady Emin Erdogan recently deliver a fresh denunciation at a conference on children's media. She declared the community is under siege.
And she accused social media and digital platforms of peddling propaganda to erase gender.
And framing queer existence as a global threat to the traditional family.
And we have to connect that rhetoric directly to policy. This isn't just an isolated comment. It's an extension of President Erdogan's long-standing denunciations. He's repeatedly described LGBTQ+ identities as perverted and unnatural.
Right.
And critically, he declared 2025 the year of the family, which isn't just a slogan. It frames the state's opposition ideologically. It gives cover for official action.
So what's the actual, the measurable consequence of this high-level rhetoric on the ground? The Gay 45 material pointed to that staggering data from the MLSA report.
That data is so critical. The Medya ve Hukuk Çalışmaları Derneği, they specialize in documenting these violations, so their report isn't just a count. It's a documented measure of strategic state targeting. And the numbers are, frankly, chilling. They tracked a really steep rise in legal cases.
How steep are we talking?
Between September 2024 and August 2025 alone, they tracked 275 criminal trials, 430 hearings, and just an astonishing 1,696 defendants.
1,600 defendants, wow.
And here's the key analytical point. Over half of those defendants were specifically labeled activists.
So it's not random arrests?
No. It's systematic political targeting, weaponizing these vague laws to silence specific critical voices. It's an administrative firewall designed to stop organizing.
And we see similar patterns nearby, right?
We do.
Yeah, look at Kazakhstan. They proposed a contested propaganda bill that's modeled directly on Russia's restrictions.
Straight out of the Russian playbook. That draft law proposed severe penalties, fines, potential jail time, just for sharing pro-LGBTQ+ content. It was unanimously approved in the lower chamber, which, signals overwhelming political support for the crackdown.
But it hit a snag in the Senate, thankfully.
It did. It's been postponed indefinitely. Now, they didn't reject it, but they cited the need for extensive amendments across a dozen other laws.
So it's not dead, just paused.
Exactly. President Tokayev was strongly promoting this bill. So while it's in limbo, the political desire to pass it is still very, very high. It's a pause, not a defeat.
That pattern really does confirm this idea of a global playbook for repression. Moving west, we see that siege met with just outright visible defiance in Hungary. Budapest Mayor Gergely Karacsony is now facing charges for helping organize the banned June Pride March.
And this is the direct political challenge. It puts a huge spotlight on the power struggle between Budapest's local government and the national government, run by PM Viktor Orban.
And the charges come from that new freedom of assembly law passed in March.
The one that effectively banned Pride by claiming it was harmful to minors, yes.
But is there a risk here that this defiance just provokes an even harsher backlash from Orban's party?
That's the high-stakes gamble. But the mayor's public response was incredibly powerful. He called the charges completely absurd, said he was proud to take every political risk for the sake of my city's freedom.
And people still showed up.
Tens of thousands. It shows that while the political machine is trying to repress, civil society is actively pushing back.
So to wrap this political section, we have to look south to Chile, the election of Jose Antonio Cast. That marks the sharpest shift to the political right there since 1990.
It is a critical development to watch across Latin America. Cast ran heavily on anti-immigration and law and order platforms.
Which usually correlate with rollbacks on social rights?
Historically, yes. A political swing of this magnitude usually has profound and far-reaching consequences. This is going to redefine the political conversation in the Southern Cone.
Okay, so we see state power hardening in places like Turkey, Kazakhstan, Chile. But what happens when that power tries to control digital spaces? Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's transition from that overt political repression to the digital battleground. Because here, we find these two deeply conflicting data points that reveal a massive tension between official policy and just undeniable public demand.
The digital sphere is where visibility and control clash most violently.
Starting with control, the Gay 45 material highlighted a huge wave of content enforcement from Meta. Campaigners reported that Meta removed or restricted over 50 accounts worldwide. Abortion access providers, queer groups, reproductive health orgs.
And groups like the Netherlands Registered Women Help Women were affected. The central problem here isn't just the takedowns, it's the lack of transparency. The decisions are often opaque, seemingly arbitrary, and the appeals process is so slow it harms access to vital information.
And when tech platforms restrict information, it just compounds the state-level repression.
Yeah.
Okay, now for the paradox. Despite this hostile climate, and GLA did document increased anti-trans hate, we see growing fears for safety. Despite all that, we see an absolute explosion of demand for content. We're talking about the Pornhub 2025 Year in Review.
The contrast is dramatic. It just speaks to the power of digital spaces as well as refuges. So while lesbians stayed the top category globally, transgender content saw a massive surge. It became the second most viewed category overall.
And the specific data is just astonishing. Global searches for the term queer were up 132%, bisexual up 88%. And in a major cultural indicator, femboy entered the global top 10 searches for the first time ever, ranked #1 among gay users.
The ambassador for Pornhub's trans content, Natasha Dreams, she described this as a cultural shift. She argued this huge spike means viewers are actively seeking out content that challenges traditional gender assumptions.
So if demand is surging like this, does that mean the political pressure isn't working? Or are these two worlds, the state and the digital sphere, just completely disconnected?
They're definitely connected, but maybe in a paradoxical way. Increased state hostility can drive marginalized audiences, underground and into the digital sphere for community and representation they can't find safely in public.
Which in turn spikes the demand statistics.
Precisely. So the political suppression might actually be fueling the very visibility it wants to curb, just in the digital realm.
That is fascinating. And it leads us right into our next section. The nuances of identity and those essential moments of cultural resilience that shine through all this conflict. Speaking of identity, let's talk about that surprising UK ONS data on bisexuality among young people.
This was a genuine statistical head-scratcher. It reversed a decade-long trend of steady growth.
Right.
Bisexual identification among 16 to 24-year-olds dropped sharply, from 7.5% in 2023 down to 5.1% in 2024. That's a huge reversal in 1 year.
So why the drop? Are fewer young people identifying as bi, or are they just finding more nuanced terms?
The analysis in the Gay 45 material suggests the latter. It raises these important questions about the fluidity of self-identification. I mean, are these patterns driven by changing social fashion? Maybe young people are adopting more specific terms like pansexual or the broader term queer.
Or it could just be how they respond to a survey when more labels are available.
They could be. It's something we need to watch.
And while the language of identity shifts, visibility is sometimes being pushed into these really conservative public spaces, causing friction. Let's look at the World Cup 2026 match in Seattle.
A perfect example of conflicting values colliding on a global stage. The match between Iran and Egypt in Seattle coincides with the city's annual Pride celebrations. So local organizers designated it a Pride match.
And both visiting nations reacted very strongly.
They did. The Egyptian Football Association formally protested, citing a conflict with their cultural and religious values. And you have to remember, both Iran and Egypt have severe anti-homosexuality laws.
So putting that match in one of America's most progressive cities during Pride weekend was always going to be a political flashpoint.
Guaranteed.
But amidst this conflict, you see these cultural milestones that are still being cemented. Look at Sundance.
The 2026 edition is a landmark year. It's the last one in Utah, and, crucially, the first since the death of its founder, Robert Redford.
And the programming really reflected that legacy, a rich, queer slate.
No.
Gay 45 highlighted new work from Greg Araki, powerful documentaries like Barber Forever.
Yeah, Barbara Hammer, yes.
Yeah.
And the Brittany Griner story. And Give Me the Ball, celebrating Billie Jean King.
It just shows that cultural permanence being established regardless of the political climate trying to erase it.
And we see that celebration globally, too. The Tattoo Awards in France. Novelist Fatima Das was named Personality of the Year.
And I was really struck by them honoring Budapest Pride for mobilizing over 200,000 people. Again, that fusion of celebration and defiance.
And that cultural moment with Christine and the Queens performing Brodsky Beats Small Town Boy, it connects today's battles right back to the struggles of the 80s.
That connection is so essential. And resilience sometimes just means outright refusal, which brings us to Eurovision.
Yes. Swiss winner Nemo, who is non-binary, announced they're returning their 2024 trophy.
That is a major political statement. Why?
They're protesting Israel's continued participation in the 2026 contest. They said the EBU's decision contradicts Eurovision's own values of unity and inclusion.
And this isn't just symbolic, it's creating a real consequence.
Absolutely. The material confirms broadcasters from Spain, Ireland, the Netherlands, Slovenia, and Iceland have all announced a boycott of next year's event over this. Culture is not passive. It's a site of active political refusal.
So what does this all mean? When you look across the map from Turkey suppression to the surging digital demand for trans content, the defiance in Budapest, what's the core takeaway for you, our listener, as we close out the year?
The global queer experience right now is just defined by this dramatic, high-stakes tension. It's a painful push and pull between explosive visibility, think Pornhub, Sundance, Budapest, and this concerted state-level political suppression in Turkey, Chile, Kazakhstan. You can't understand one side without seeing the intense pressure from the other.
It's a powerful reminder that progress is definitely not linear, and that knowledge is power when tracking these global developments.
Absolutely. The Gay 45 material shows that real knowledge requires tracking not just policy, but also cultural shifts, tech trends, and those counter-movements that resist state power.
And on that note, there's one last point from the material that really stuck with me. An exhibition in the Netherlands on queer asylum rights.
Ah, the Becker motion. A profound history.
Yeah, the Netherlands was groundbreaking. The law allowed asylum claims based on sexual orientation starting in 1980. That's revolutionary political intent.
But the reality was slow. The first refugee wasn't actually granted asylum on those grounds until 1992.
12 years.
12 years. And that gap, that long, slow, grinding struggle between a policy being declared and that policy actually translating into real human practice for people seeking safety, it's a powerful thought to leave you with.
It really is a truly critical lens to apply to everything we've talked about today. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Happy New Year.
You can also listen to any of our articles. Visit gay45.com to read more quality journalism.